That'll tell you.
Perfect. Right, hello everyone. This is Haunted Hacker Podcast number 49, and tonight we've got Tickle, Director of CyberGuard, and he will tell us a little bit about himself and the company. Just a little background how I met Sean. So I attended National Cybersecurity Conference a couple of weeks ago, and Sean was actually one of the speakers there, and he was talking about ransomware, how it's developed, and basically how they tackle it in general, and obviously general patterns, and obviously hopefully we'll talk about that today as well. So yeah, Sean, please go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and the company.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Alex. So yeah, my name's Sean Tickle. So I'm the head of CyberGuard Technologies, which is part of the OGL group. So we're an MSSP that sit within what's called the OGL group, which is a conglomeration of other companies like MSP, software development, all that sort of stuff. I've been in the industry 5 years, give or take. So I haven't been in the industry that long. I started as that little junior. I wouldn't say
you've done well then. You've done well if you're already there.
And rose through the ranks and all the usual stuff. And landed at CyberGuard nearly 2 years ago now. Or about a year and a half. It was like mid-pandemic, like a week before the UK lockdown, which was certainly interesting times. But yeah, we specialize in managed detect and respond. So we have that kind of the SIEM element as centralized login and visibility. And then we utilize elements such as EDR, so endpoint detection and response, to give us that endpoint protection from a somewhat of a response point of view for isolating devices, blocking files, all that kind of proactive work for if we see ransomware or any other type of malicious malware on a system, along with surrounding services that you tend to see, like red teaming, penetration testing, consultancy around ISO 27001, all the usual user awareness training, all the usual stuff,
So yeah. Quick question, Sean, since you've only been in the industry for a few years, I myself kind of switched over, I've been in technology, throughout my life, but what was your past before that? How did you switch so easily? Because obviously that's a huge conversation right now, is the gap and the this and the that. So what's your background before, if you don't?
Honestly, I ran coffee shops. So I switched from, I did go to university. I didn't just make the instant switch. I wasn't like, I'm done with this now. But yeah, so I was in hospitality since I was 15. So I was in hospitality for a good 10 years before I decided that I wanted to advance into something that I really had a passion for. I always had a passion for computers, as most of the people that come into this industry do, and decided to go to university. So I went to University of Wolverhampton. It was really nice because the first year you got to kind of see which direction you wanted to move into. And originally I was going to go into software development because I was just chasing the money more than passion at that point. I was very much, oh yeah, there it is. Did a software development module, hated it. It just was not for me whatsoever. It was great, but it didn't give me any sort of drive. I really wasn't feeling it. And then I did a cybersecurity module, just basic lab stuff, generally what it's all about and all the rest of it, and just fell in love with it straight away. So then I was like, okay, this is definitely for me. This is what I want to go into.
That's
and
awesome.
I completed my degree, and 2 days after I finished my final module, got my first interview, managed to get in there as my junior, and the rest was history then. Junior to security analyst, then senior, then team leader, then SOC manager, and then the rest. But I've watched a couple of you guys' videos, and I know that obviously we'll talk about a huge amount of topics, but recruitment and that break into the industry is huge for me, because it's so hard to do for some people.
I would say you had a Cinderella story, but you didn't. You had the genie in a bottle story that everybody's looking for, right? Everybody wants to be able to graduate and get the job that you did. Yeah. So that's really amazing that somebody saw that in you and took that chance. And
it was great, and there was a lot I did that we can talk about that probably gave me a little bit of an edge. you know. But even when I came into the industry, like I got that first role, I came into my first junior role. The moment I got in, like the technology, obviously, in our industry moves so quickly that everything that I learned at university was like instantly obsolete. It was just done. And I was like, what is going on? Like they were throwing out buzzwords and acronyms and all this sort of weird and wonderful stuff. And I was like, huge imposter syndrome. Like imposter syndrome hit me straight away. And I was like, I do not deserve to be here. Like what's going on? You know, all of it. And obviously you get better when you get over that learning curve. And I would say that university gave me that great foundation to kind of at least know some of what they were talking about. But yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely.
So it's funny you say that, because I think that's the question I was wondering. I was like, if you take yourself back to that first interview, right? You gave what do you think exactly like triggered them to take you in? Because I know a lot of people, and we got a lot of people in Discord, that probably finished. They didn't study it at university, but they finished a lot of so-called qualifying certificates per se, right? Whether it's CompTIA or CEH, and they're still struggling to find jobs, So what do you think? And consider you're a little bit different, where you just studied at university. By that time, I don't think so you would have completed CompTIA or CEH and things like that.
No, I didn't, and I still haven't. I've only got my degree. I don't have any other certifications. So I never completed anything additionally after I got into the industry.
So what do you think made you unique at that point?
Honestly,
why do you think that they take you?
Attitude and aptitude, all about attitude and aptitude. Like you gotta love it. You've got to love the industry, and like obviously, like I said, I was chasing the money when I went to go into software development. If I was chasing the money going into security, I wouldn't have lasted my first year, because the level of stress that you're under, and and we can talk about that more, but all of the I was talking about imposter syndrome and burnout, and mental health in our industry is a huge issue, because like most people don't survive their first year. There's a reason why there's such a large gap in our industry for jobs, and then we think, like you were just saying, we want people to fill them. We've got all these great candidates, and they're not being successful in some ways. Well, why aren't they being successful? And that's a complicated issue. Like, but for me, I mean, but yeah, we're recruiting for 4 new junior analysts at the moment. So proper entry level positions. It doesn't matter. I don't look for qualifications. I look for that kind of attitude and aptitude and what they've done in terms of experience. But we, in the first day alone of us putting the publication out, we had 90 applications, and we're like, and those were all just local to us, and we're in Kidderminster in Birmingham. It's not a hot spot, it's I mean, it's one of those places. But and out of those 90, 20 were applicable, so you've instantly kind of shaved down 70 applications, and that's because it just doesn't read as if they actually want to get into the industry because they want to get into the industry for money, or they're bored in their current role or that sort of stuff. But in order to get through that, in order to make you that diamond in the rough and give you that edge in interviews,
right,
you have to have a USP. You're selling yourself at the end of the day in these interviews, so you've got to have, okay, well, are you on, like one of the lads who we recruited who's doing amazingly well at the moment, called Matt. He came in as a junior. He does Try Hack Me, the learning platform Try Hack Me. Yeah. Absolutely loves it. He was one of the top 2,000 in the UK at one point, or even the world. I probably got that wrong, and he'll flame me about it next week. But and that's sort of like him doing that because he loves doing it, and he loves getting in. He wants to get into the industry. And then, I mean, the biggest thing for me is that interview that I had with him. Yeah, we went through technical questions and all the usual stuff, which don't mean anything because Google exists and I can teach anything out, so it doesn't really matter. But it turned from an interview into just a conversation, and that's the biggest thing for me. It was just, have you seen this? Have you seen this latest attack? Have you seen this latest form of malware, or this latest attack vector? And you can see the passion in them, and the passion is what gets you over the line. When you've had, I was just saying to Alex, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, I've had a hell of a week in terms of incident response this week. And for us to, when you're banging your head against a wall, the passion is what gets you through it, you know. And for me, that's why that attitude and aptitude is so important. And also, I think I did a slide deck using kill chain phases on the talk breach, like from a while back. And I didn't even get to do it. I ended up just giving them the notes in the end and just being like, oh yeah, by the way, here it is. So yeah.
Actually, well, when Mike gets on here shortly, you know, he's actually mentoring the kid from that did the talk. So
no way, really?
Yeah. So
yeah, that's great.
He does a lot of work in the UK, and so he's done lots of work with the Met Police, and he's nice. A mentor for the children and like potential, you know, children that are, or children and teenagers, or you know, that are potential risk, you know, for going to that. Because we literally, this came up the other day in another podcast, that like we literally are handing, you know, children tools that, but we're not teaching them like any responsibility with it. We're it's like,
the moral ethics you can behind
crack all this stuff, and then we're just like, go, you know, you got, you know, go. And you know, there's a lot of other things. But going back to your incident response, I think we should go back to that, because that, I have not heard these stories. And
they happened this week, and I think by Friday I was done. I was keeling over.
I think let's start with the one you can probably go into details. Is the one where you missed New Year's Eve, I believe.
Oh yeah, I missed Christmas, Alex. I didn't just miss New Year's. I don't think my family's ever going to forgive me for that one. But yeah, okay, we'll start with that one, and then I could talk about the other ones. One's still pretty actively ongoing from this week, so I don't think I can say too much, but it's a doozy. But yeah, so we had we've obviously in CSA we have a dedicated incident response team that we've got a CREST certified plan, all the usual rubbish. But to be fair, like the guys, their experience within it is phenomenal. Scott and Mark are the team leaders there, and they just absolutely annihilate how they find this root cause stuff and how they can document. It's beyond me, you know. And so we get a call Boxing Day. Nobody can log in. No systems are working for a particular company. You know, entirely like unresponsive, and we're like, oh great, classic, isn't it? You know, okay, jump in. So we form the team as we usually do. Okay, let's get some information, what's going on, blah blah blah. Okay, well let's see if we can log in and see what's on the servers. Dark side ransomware everywhere. Like it just ripped through this company's network. Like a little time later we found out it happened on Christmas Day, like late Christmas Day, which is just classic anyway, isn't it? So we got indications late Christmas Day, and then obviously then it just pivoted into Boxing Day. But for that entire period, it took about 2-3 weeks to get the whole thing over in the end. But it was just totaled. Like every VM was encrypted, even at the data store level. You had SQL servers, databases, like completely crippled. On-site backups, great, isn't it? On-site backups, I can't believe we still do that, but yeah, like that was a domain connected in. You know, every server, DCs, everything was down.
So if you look into this, have you managed to find the cause of it? How did it get inside the company at the first place?
And again, this is a doozy as well, because 3 months ago, we ended up dealing with like 2 of the biggest like dark side attacks in the UK, like from around September onwards from last year. And we dealt with another one from a retail company around October time. And we investigated root cause. It was a VPN that had a vulnerability in that they leveraged, which basically just dumped the creds.
Yep. And
from there, they were able to get in, and that initial foothold, those creds were domain joined. So it's kind of over at that point anyway, but they ran a series of LDAP queries from kind of a recon point of view. They had a little play around, see what was around. They had, I can't remember the standard antivirus basically. So didn't have tamper protection involved or anything like that. And they initially dropped a malicious package that was blocked by the antivirus. So that did trigger an alert, but because they had the domain creds at this point, they just turned it off. So that was just game over at that point. Used PS exec, obviously, for distributing the malware, ripped out hundreds of gigabytes worth of, actually for these guys in October, it was about 80 odd gigabytes worth of data, exfiltrated all that out the VPN. So that was in the logs as well, for that double extortion element. Again, ransomware everything up, made sure that they deleted backups and all the usual stuff. And away they go, and we were like, wow, like we went to root cause for that, fully documented it. Took us about a week. But in the process, and this would be something really interesting to talk to Mike about, we came across the dark side decryptor before it was publicly outed. Right. So we managed to get our hands on that, and we actually decrypted a fair chunk of what we were seeing. So we were like, okay, this is cool. We started fielding it out to some of our friends that we know in the industry. We didn't want to make too much of a big deal because, as we saw when it was actually kind of published, DarkSide said, "Oh, thanks very much. We changed our keys. Yep. That will no longer work." So it is what it is there. But yeah, so we had that one in October. Came in on Boxing Day for this big one. Exactly the same VPN, same vulnerabilities, TTPs, exactly the same. Like you could have literally just copy and pasted the report.
I hope not the same company again.
No. I wouldn't have even taken the call at that point. I would have been like, right, game over, mate.
Right.
But yeah, so and that was on a bigger scale though, like because they took hundreds of gigabytes worth of IP. They encrypted the on-site backups. They encrypted everything, and even with this decryptor, we could do a certain amount, but there were still elements that couldn't be decrypted or were perhaps corrupted. Because of the no offsite backups, restoration was bad. Like, and you know what? And it got to the point where they were probably a hair's breadth away from paying the ransom, which sat at that point at about 2.4 million. And they engaged a negotiator and all the usual stuff that they do in that situation. And it was only because we managed to start getting some traction on the recovery through their SQL databases, through what we'd done already, that they backed out and said, no, okay, we'll take the gamble and see if we can get back up and running. And they did, but wow, it was it was close.
Question, did they have cyber insurance?
I believe they did, because we had to, when obviously we're not partnered with those cyber insurers. So when we submit a report, we have to say what we've done, the amount of work, because then obviously it comes out of their pocket ultimately. So they did have that. But in terms of, again, same MO, standard antivirus, nobody's monitoring it.
Right.
Nobody's looking at these alerts. So I think people see that insurance as that blanket of like, yeah, don't worry, we've got cyber insurance.
And I think there's been a lot of conversations on cyber insurance, taking a turn in the future because, they kind of came into it and they didn't know what they're doing. They're insurance. Yeah. And now that all of this ransomware is coming out and there's, some, conversation regarding whether or not, the fact that it is being covered by cyber insurance, is that actually increasing the ransomware? So there's a lot of things that kind of go around that. That's why I was asking that question, because I was
it's a good point.
Because Mike went through an incident not too long ago, and he was talking, the cyber insurance people came in and, they immediately want to, justify like, okay, so how much before we, pay the ransom, or, it's because again, it's an insurance company. They want to make sure that they come out on the better side of that.
They
pay as little as they can.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, they look at it from a numbers game, isn't it? It's like, no,
this is people's lives. Yeah.
Yeah, it's criminals, it's data. It's like, it's not just like, oh, look, it's a sort code. It's no, there's someone's birth certificate, where they live, like their national insurance number, Yeah. We deal with quite a lot of NHS trusts. If one of them ever got hit, oh my God, like it doesn't bear thinking. I mean, look at what happened with the Irish healthcare service.
The whole healthcare. I mean, critical infrastructure, healthcare. This is not about money. This is about
yeah.
And they haven't quite figured that part out. So, and it's funny that both of those things happen through a VPN, because I actually work at AppGate, and we do zero trust technology, and like a big part of that is kill the VPN, because VPN technology is so old and it's got so many vulnerabilities at this point. In fact, Fortinet not too long ago had their own breach of their VPN, but they also are now doing, zero trust technology. So it's kind of
zero trust is, it's definitely the way. It's definitely wising up. Like I think before, and again, I haven't been in the industry that long, but when I first came into it and people were like talking about it, I mean, maybe not right away, but it seemed more restricted than it needed to be. I think it jumped a long way in a very short amount of time. So it's a much more viable solution in what people are seeing. Because like you say, like, if it's not vulnerabilities, it's compromised credentials. If it's not them, it's lack of MFA, like there's so many caveats.
Right.
Well, lack of MFA is how Olympia, the Japanese or Korean company that been literally breached 3 days ago. So apparently it started because one of their employees didn't have multi-factor authentication, and that's it, and they got it like that. Which kind of, on one side, that means they actually tried. The company did implement it. It's just how much. And to be fair, we face same issues with the companies that we work with, and it's exactly the question, because when you implement MFA, you have two options there. Well, we use Microsoft products, so you have two options there. You can either enforce it fully, which means person cannot actually do anything until he actually activates it, or you just give them an option to say, like, can you do it? If you don't want to, you just carry on with life. But on the report, it's still going to show that we kind of tried MFA. So here's the question as well. It's kind of, you have to think about, can you force someone to do something? Because to make your company policy. And we don't see a lot of companies, for some reason, actually enforcing it. They're just saying it, we're giving them as an option, but it shouldn't be as an option.
Yeah. I mean, case in point, the ones we dealt with this week, like 3 out of the 4 of them could have been solved with just MFA, and I understand people say that, listen, we're always going to have that kind of service / kind of security operations where, like, okay, we don't want to impact service too much. I watched a Chris Roberts interview that you guys did the other week, and like he was talking about, like, we're in the NHS Trust, and there's a number of critical systems that like cannot be touched, and he said about patching, and like, well, patching isn't the go-to, but ring fencing could be, or at least mitigating the risk there, and then you can go from there. But we see it where, like, if you could just, and we have the same thing, we do patch management for a number of NHS trusts, and we jump on calls, and the IT department get it. The IT department are like, listen, if you have to reboot devices and inconvenience them, not critical systems, obviously, we're not mental, but like if you just need to reboot someone's laptop or someone's desktop or whatever out of hours, it needs to be done, and they have users complain to them, and it's the whole thing, but, I can't do my job. And it's like, well, right, how are we going to balance this? And you can't do your job because you're inconvenienced for 10 minutes because the latest cumulative update's installing, or, you will
lose your job.
Yeah,
you will cause
nightmare's going to come for you, or some other weird and wonderful thing. I know we had the MS HTML one recently, which is patched in the September cumulative update. So it's like, okay, we'll get that in. And they're like, no, I need to do my job. And it's like, you are going to get done over soon. And if it turns out it's because you didn't simply restart your machine, it's crazy. And it's the same with MFA. You see the exact same thing. What about the downtime? The downtime, it's negligible. Like, phase it in, structure it. It's fine. But don't say. Or we see people who like leave it in reporting mode, and you're like, well, okay, how long are you going to leave it in reporting mode until you actually turn it on? Because reporting mode, unless you're monitoring it, which they never are, so it doesn't matter, it's not going to do anything. Like, please, for the love of God, just turn it on. And if you do turn it on, don't use like weak and like elements of MFA, like, with Office 365. Like, you've got like the one where I didn't realize until this the other day when we dealt with another instant response, where if you get the mobile phone authentication where it calls you, you literally just have to press hash and it'll let them in.
Yeah.
Like it calls you and then you go, is this you? And then you press hash and then it lets them in. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, why was that like a viable authenticate? And then obviously we're like, okay, you need to go to like a one-time code and all the usual stuff, and it's all good there. But yeah, I always think like when we have those conversations, it's all about like, do you want the minor inconvenience now to know that you just reduce a massive attack surface on your organization? Or do you want to just keep putting up with it, and then eventually you're going to have to, you'll be in the papers, or, you know, or
lose your business completely.
Yeah,
that's a
reputational damage. Like, how do they not see reputational damage as like this huge thing? They think ransomware and think ransom. I mean, that's part of it, and like obviously with leak sites, your data is going to be out there, but the reputational damage against you is huge. And 9 times out of 10 as well, the tabloids that we see some, like off the back of incident responses who then become our customers, but when we see them in the papers, they always get it wrong. Like the tabloids always get it wrong. Like they'll blame the client when it's actually the client's third party, or the third party, and it's a supply chain element, you know, and you're just like, come on, man.
Yeah, I really don't think that this world truly understands the interconnectedness of all of the different apps and the APIs and all of the different things that go. I mean, it's a giant spider web, and they're just like, but it's on my phone, it's safe. Like,
yeah. It's like, oh, it's not my laptop, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, I'm the crazy lady in the grocery store and airport lines, like talking about like, just check your stuff, complicated passwords, like just try, okay? Like,
it's terrible, isn't it? You kind of feel like you want to shake them, but like it, and the biggest thing I learned was when we're on these conversations and we talk to people about security. I kind of, what I did in the talk when that Alex saw at the conference, you know, we have this like roadmap to maturity, and we say like at the start it's just standard AV, a security posture assessment for gap analysis, just figure out what's going on, you know, MFA, cyber essentials, not even plus at this point, just get anything that at least raises your awareness, blah, blah, blah. And then we can worry about the big stuff. Then we can worry about visibility with SIEMs, EDR solutions, patch management, and all, you know, like a more verbose kind of posture there, you know, and that's fine. But it's so frustrating to just be like, you're not even doing this small stuff. You know, like just
it's usually the smaller stuff. It's, you know, like now the BEC compromises, those can be a little bit tricky. I mean, I know there's a lot of user training in that, but they have gotten very, very complicated. Like some of these, you know, they're very targeted, right? So, and we know that in the industry, we know that, but the general public still hasn't, in my opinion, really caught on to how much that is, right? So they don't, you know, it's still a user. You know, we're teaching users, we can't blame people because, you know, they're only hearing of it after the fact. And I think what, for me, one of my goals in this industry is to try to help the common user in the world understand why it's important. Because they go, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have this. I don't have much money. And I'm like, do you have money? Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Do you have a car? I'm like,
got an identity. You know,
I'm like, do you have an identity? I said, so what happens if you actually, even if you had bad credit, but what if you like had bad credit and then all of a sudden you left and went to another apartment and you found out that you've been evicted 4 times from some other place and have like $17,000 of debt. You had nothing before. Guess what? Now you have to prove you are who you are. And not only that, you can't get into an apartment because you've already rented 4 other apartments and been evicted from it. Like you have to kind of like, I want to be able to like use that. So put it
like
in
shock tactics, isn't it? It's like, listen, this is what could realistically happen to you.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but do these little simple things from home.
Yeah. And you reduce it at least.
And that's all I'm asking. Yeah. And I'm like, that's like worst case scenario, obviously. Yeah. But, you know, at the same time, you know, like if that's where I think our conversation on the technical to the general public is missing a little bit, you know, because
there's a disconnect.
There is definitely a disconnect. But at least it's becoming a little bit better. You know, it's on the news. I'm traveling.
I bet you hit the nail on the head where, because it's so much more prevalent in the news now, I think people are wising up to it a lot more, you know, and it's not us trying to convince people like we say, you know, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Right.
You know, you just have to be, and let's face it, the dirty secret within, or the, you know, within InfoSec is that you just have to be better than the person they're going to attack next. You know, so as long as you have, if you make that paradigm of pain for them that little bit harder, so it's, unless they're really targeting you, obviously. But like, you know, you make sure that you've patched on your bloody VPN firewall, you know, like, and you make sure that you've got MFA enabled. They get bored and just go off to someone else, and you know,
you don't break into.
See, here's the argument, right? I think one of our guests, I think it might have been Rob Fuller, or someone. They actually made a really good point in terms of how much can we blame those users, right? And let's say we have
I totally agree.
Huge company, right? I mean, in the end of the day, it's our responsibility as cybersecurity people who work there, to kind of make sure that even if they click somewhere because they don't know about it and they're tired or something, you know, nothing should happen to them, you know, because I think especially when you compare it to the other jobs, right? As somebody compared to like engineer of the car, right? I said like those people who fix your car, they're not really like sitting there and being angry at you because you don't know how to fix your own engine or something, you know?
No, exactly. I totally agree. And you can't blame those, but it's not their job. Like, it's not their vocation, it's not their passion. You know, we live and breathe this stuff, and we love it, so we know about it, and we know that, like you say, like if it's a mechanic or something, they know what they're doing there. You got to trust those people, you know, and I think there's an element of trust there as well. But you can't blame the user. You know, you can't, like, if they click on a link, because if you blame that user as well, and action is taken against them, say within the organization, then you inspire a culture of fear, where if you want that culture where they click on the link, maybe they enter credentials, but they go, oh God, okay, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to raise it to my IT manager, who's going to raise it to my, you know, security team, or, you know, you might have an internal one, and blah, 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 and we can get on the crack. But the people who should be held accountable realistically are at the board level. You know, like, they're the people who make these decisions. And if they don't see the value in having an information security kind of a good posture within that realm, then those are the people that ultimately are gonna cop it, you know.
What I'm witnessing is a lot of, because usually, because I work in consultancy for cybersecurity, right? So we deal with a lot of IT people from that company. We just have a better knowledge of what to do, right? And a lot of the times we hear situation where they basically say, oh, like, this is amazing, we would love to do this and apply, can you help us? And then it's end up being, well, we have to take it to the board, and we don't know whether CEO and then will agree to this, you know? So do you think there is this problem where, like, CISO people and basically all the heads that are in charge of IT, no matter what their position is, maybe they're chief of information security, right? But they still don't feel like they have this power and responsibility? Because it shouldn't be a situation where, like, the head of your IT and security should be worried because to take it to his boss and be like, well, I'm not sure whether he's going to like it or accept it, you know? I don't see that happening with other departments, you know. Imagine like head of your financial goes and he worries about like something is wrong. No, he just goes because he knows this is important.
He sorts it out, doesn't he?
Yeah. So the information chief of your information security shouldn't be worried to take it to your CEO, and he should be like, I'm taking it because this is happening, you know, because I'm the head of the IT and security. But I don't see that culture is happening yet. Well, I don't know about US, but definitely not in UK. They still feel like they're under pressure and they're below everybody.
Well, they are. And I can personally tell you a couple of stories of how things relate, because I used to do accounting and I was constantly told, and this is the same thing that happens with security, okay, and CISOs. They are given a budget, and if they go over that budget, no matter what the need is, they and they get told, you know what, but you don't make us money.
Yeah, that's the bang on. Yeah.
And I'm like, if I didn't do the accounting and I didn't invoice and I didn't take the money and put it into the bank, you wouldn't have the money. And the same thing with security. When you get breached and that 2.4 million comes out of your bank account, you don't have that money either. Okay. Let's talk facts. But until that changes, you're absolutely right. Like, until that concept changes, and yes, of course, money runs business, but right now it's more, we need to think of like holistically, we all make money, but they look at certain departments higher because they bring in higher amounts of money. And I'm like, let me do your, no, don't get me started.
Because it winds you up though, doesn't it? Because like,
I'm like, and I feel bad because CISOs consistently are being fired because they cannot do something that they were asking to do because the board or money stopped it. And then they're held responsible for it.
Yep.
And I mean, I've had to stand my ground back because I also did a lot of HR as well. And a lot of laws, like there were laws that where I was held responsible personally. My house could be taken. And it was very clear in the laws if certain things like W-9s aren't signed correctly and turned in by certain times. Like now, again, it's like a security thing. If that happens, I've been told by more than one C-suite person, oh, don't worry about it. And I'm like, you know what? You hired me to do a job. If you don't want me to do this job correctly, I'm happy to leave.
Yeah.
But you hired me to do a job. I'm telling you what is required, and I'm not going to lose my house for you. And I'm not going to go to jail for you, and that's, I mean, not everybody is willing to do that, and, it's, I don't know.
No, I think you're bang on, especially with the CISO's head is always on the chopping block. Yep. First instant response or like compromise they've had, it's that guy's fault or it's that person's fault, and it's just like, that is clear. That is 9 times out of 10, that is not the case. Like you denied their budget for God knows how long. They wanted to bring in cloud app security. So they've got a response around email. They wanted to bring in that visibility. They wanted to bring in a security team. Mm-hmm. And you said, no, because it's a money sink and all the rest of it. And why are we paying for all the security and we're not getting anything out of it? Well, when it does happen, trust me, you'll see the value when we've just saved you from a ransomware attack. We just saved you from a business email compromise, And not even just us, like I'm not touting it from an MSSP point of view. I'm just saying like anything, like, wait, Papa winds me up as well, because like those are the people, like the CISO, and like Alex said, like they should be empowered to make their own decisions, like throughout the stage. They should be able to say, this is something, and from a gap analysis point of view, we've got this big hole around email security. This is what I want to bring in. This is what I'm going to bring in. And this is extra money that I need, budget be damned, and that's okay, but I mean, I've never seen that. So I don't know if you guys have, but I've never seen someone do that. It always has to be signed off by a board. There always has to be a business case behind it. And it's like, well, the business case is we won't get absolutely annihilated when they come for us, but yeah.
So to go back a little bit to ransomware, because I still got some questions about it. So you mentioned when you were dealing with the previous ransomware, they had to invite negotiators, is what they call them right now. Yeah. And obviously there is always a question regarding to pay or not to pay. So what's your opinion on both of those things? Well, first of all, whether companies should pay or no, and at what point maybe you kind of forced to pay, and the other one is obviously there's this big argument right now about so-called negotiators, such a new job being created, whether what we have, like there is some special negotiator who knows how to deal with the ransom people, it's not like they're sitting there and you got some psychology to put in it. They're quite straightforward what they want to. Can you really negotiate something like that? Because it's quite different area of negotiation. There's a lot of people saying like this is just made up job, it shouldn't be like that. If you have a mindset of not paying, then should there really be a negotiator in the first place? So
and plus the negotiator thing, like I saw them do their work and they literally just type in like, would you accept just $1 million? Well, I could do that.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not a qualified negotiator, but I'm pretty sure I could, if all it is just hammering them down on price, I'm pretty sure I could give it a crack, I don't see it as a viable kind of, we need to bring in this specialist. If it was a hostage negotiation, which I suppose it is in a way because it's data, but it's one of them. But in terms of obviously paying the ransom, I don't think I could ever say in good conscience that they should pay the ransom, because it is what it is there. But at the end of the day, should I be making that decision for an organization that, like the one over Christmas, they were at that point because they had no options. Like it was pay the ransom and potentially get our data back, and or the, you know, get the decryptor so they can potentially get their data back. And which we saw a hefty amount of corruption in their, like, in some of their data as well. So it's not as if like you're getting back.
You can't guarantee the return.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you don't know if it's actually going to work in that.
Exactly.
So there's that question anyway. But I'd never want to be in a position where I'd have to make that decision. But for me, I always say, like, you shouldn't pay these people because, well, realistically, okay, you might be able to get an element of service back there, and that could be okay. But they've still got your data. Just because they're not leaking it online doesn't mean they're not packaging it and going through back channels, or they'll just leak it. I mean, they don't tend to leak it anyway because it's a best business model for them, and for them it is a business, so it's fair enough. But yeah, it's a tough one.
It depends on how, like, when you talk about criminal minds, like, depending on their, you know, the cause of why they're doing it. If they're doing it for money, you know, business model or not, like, they don't have to give you the encryptor. You can pay and they can disappear, and then, like, that's it. But the thing about the negotiation that scares me the most is that at some point they're going to figure out the same, you know, equations that the negotiators use. And so ransomware people will start building malware and things to say, okay, if I want X amount of dollars from the negotiator, I need to go to a company this size. I need to do this. And I ask for 2.3 million. I know I get it. But if I ask for 2.4, I know I won't. Yeah. If we continue on this path where we're not, that's what I fear, because until people are paying attention, because obviously they're not stupid, you know, like, although the ransomware as a service is also causing a whole different thing as well, because now we have people that aren't even that, you know,
they have affiliate programs now, don't they? They look at this as a model where they can offer tech support for people who can.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, anybody is, you know, potentially has access to these, again, has access to tools if they want to do harm, and they don't have any, you know, what's to say that doesn't cause other issues with the negotiations, because whatever.
Because you're dealing with different people. I mean, we looked at it like the same companies, one of them made more than the other one. So, and that was reflected in the ransom. So the two dark side attacks we had, one was they started off at 900,000 for the one in October. They started off at 1.4 million for the one in December. You know, and it's like, you've clearly done your research. You've clearly looked into this and know this company is worth more than this company. I know I can extort them for more, you know, and you just think,
well, it's only going to get worse. The BEC, which they didn't in that case, but if they're doing like the BEC compromise, I mean, they've obviously done their, you know, research on that, because they're specifically targeting, you know, so it's very interesting to see what will happen.
Obviously, there's obviously an evolution, and this is something we obviously as well, we spoke with a lot of guests that we see there is a development and evolution of ransomware, right? And from your perspective, right, when you dealt with that situation back during that Christmas time, Boxing Day, and the ones you were dealing with last week, for example, have you seen anything different in a way? Maybe you used a different method of how they access.
I mean, different TTPs. There always seems to be, like, I don't see as much as it always seems to be external facing servers that they use as that initial pivoting point, and then they move into the network. For example, we have one that was a web server. It was like an externally facing web server that hosted a certain site for the organization. A plugin within that server was compromised as part of the IIS service, and they were able to upload packages from there, and then that was their initial ingress point. So you always see different TTPs, and we map those and then turn them into detect and respond rules, which is great for us, because then we protect all our clients. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, some of the TTPs are similar in terms of the tactics, techniques, and procedures. So, like, you know, they'll always go after value and shadow copy. They'll always run certain commands, like the LDAP commands, like I was saying. You tend to see that quite often in terms of recon. But in terms of, from an evolution point of view, for me, more than anything, it's got slicker. It is so, Like, it's not just script kiddies in the basement, classic kind of, it is organized gangs that are weaponizing this stuff. And then because they know the payday's there, we only see, I bet you we scratch the surface of what we see publicly disclosed. How many companies have paid and just not said anything?
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
You know, it's one of them. And just to loop back on the business email compromise, that's just as bad. You know, like, we're seeing areas there where I had one business, this was probably about a year and a half ago now, so just before I joined CyberGuard. In the space of 3 emails, someone had transferred £500,000, like, just off the back of 3 emails, you know, and it was because they compromised one account, sat on it, and then just read all of the information coming in. And when they were ready to kind of inseminate their bit, you know, oh, by the way, it was a land deal. And they were like, oh, by the way, the account figures have changed. Just check with your boss. And then, it wasn't super sophisticated, because when she checked with her boss, who was looped in on the email, of course, it was a Gmail account with just his name on. And I was a bit like, okay, probably could have spotted that. But like, but you know, the fact that they sat there and they basically, they just chimed in at the right moment. You know, it's not a case of, you know, we're dealing with ones this week where they sent out hundreds of thousands of phishing emails from a single location, you know, and that's one element. But it's all about action on objectives, isn't it? It's all about what they want to accomplish. And for these people who just sat there quietly, that was they made $500,000 in 3 emails. I mean, the only thing standing between me doing that is my ethical compass. So like, it's, you know, it's crazy.
Well, and they say that the typical hacker or like attack may sit approximately 100. I don't know if this has changed, but it was like 180 something days before making a move. It has sped up, I believe. But
again, it depends, doesn't it? You know, like, it depends what they want to do. But I've seen them in there for like 6 months easy. Yeah. And they will literally just creep around. We've seen ones that have like registered domains in their Office 365 area so that they can basically use it as a domain, like a phishing campaign jumping off point that looks legitimate.
Yep.
Which is a very, very interesting one.
But you know, when we're mentioning all these numbers, right? And it sounds ridiculous, like somebody just transferred like 500,000, few millions, 5 millions. But when I was studying for GDPR compliance, so I hope in America there's something similar, right? Data protection. European Union came out with this whole thing, how should your data be protected? And when you see on their fines, so the fine structure is as simple as they either gonna fine you 20 million euros or 4% of your annual revenue.
Yeah.
So they choose whichever is bigger, right? And when I was studying for that, somebody pulled up, and it's actually public information. Per year, they basically publish all the fines. So they actually basically name shame you. So they put this company actually being charged this amount of money. And the numbers, I promise you, I think on the first 2 years, the total fines reached, I think, like a billion euros accumulated. So when you think about it, and nobody's talking about it, you know, like, European Union just collected £1 billion, billion euros from fines of GDPR, but nobody's saying like, oh, Nike just paid, like, because it doesn't even go below 20 million. It starts at 20 million, as you can imagine, because they will never choose 4% of your revenue if it's smaller than 20 million. So the fines are so big, and
that's a relative.
The government actually making more money. Would that be considered something like they kind of hold you at ransom like that? Because we're talking about them making millions, but the GDPR itself on its own collected probably like €1 billion already, since it's been started in 2016, I believe they initiated it. And the names, and it's all the big companies there. It's public knowledge. You can Google it. They will see how much every single company paid.
So Alex, the only problem that I see with that is that, like all other companies, if you fall in the 0 to 50, the 51 to 100 range of employees versus what these companies are dealing with, 4% of their annual revenue if they're talking about net versus gross, I mean, look at like how many times Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook have been fined these amazing amount. It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
At one point, I don't know what the actual amount was, but Zuckerberg had, he was making, or no, I'm sorry, it was Gates. And it was just some like ridiculous amount of money per second. Like we can't comprehend that kind of money coming in per second. And it's, it just blew my mind. And, so for them, like 4%, like, yeah, that sucked this year. But
the question is, do we know where this money after utilized, right? Because we know that, like, let's say GDPR collected 1 billion in fines for the past 2 years. But first of all, there is nothing on the news to say this company just breached your data. Right, we're not applying the same technique on a much smaller rule. Ransomware, it's all over newspapers every single time, but not data breaches. Nobody actually questions where the money go to after and spends to. I'm pretty sure there is something in the back law, but still.
So we don't have the GDPR here in the United States. I know that California and actually Colorado have both implemented very similar like type laws. That are very, follow. Colorado is in the works of it, but California has definitely implemented it. However, that being said, what's going on with that money? That would be good for you to find out, because it's probably like what we have the lottery here. And so when they brought the lottery out, they're like, do it because of the kids. Think of the kids. It's going to be education. And guess what? Like our school systems are falling apart. Where lottery is, like, I want to know where all that money is going. And there's so much, again, going back to my accounting brain, I'm just like, things don't add up.
Don't add up, does it? Like you say, is it an effective deterrent, like, or is it an inconvenience for these big companies? They get fined those big figures, and for us, like, we look at that and it's insurmountable. But for them, it's like, oh, that's a pain. Oh, okay, let's move on. And I just think it when it first came out, I thought, this is going to rock companies. Like this is going to get them on the back foot.
Yeah.
Nah. I don't see, or unless you guys see it, but I don't see anyone else doing anything.
Well, I don't know personally any company that actually got fined, but when you actually look at the list, it looks like they just go for very big companies that they know they can easily catch. Because I'm pretty sure they're not going to go for a small company because they can't really take 20 million, and 4% is not going to really make a difference from them.
They're not monsters. Like when you submit these breaches and compromises to the ICAT, they do help. Like they're not there to just wag the finger and say, oh, you should have done better, Like, don't get me wrong, if you've done really bad and you've got nothing in place and you're getting popped every 2 weeks, like, I'm sure they'll have something to say. But
like, I want to say it's a at least in the right direction how it's being handled, like not how it's being handled, but I know from people in the security industry, the compliance, like, has gone overboard. So they're so busy worried about how to check boxes off for compliance.
Tick box exercise.
They can't actually get the other stuff done. But that goes back to some of the, like, I work with enterprise corporations, and it's amazing to, find out that an enterprise corporation has like just a couple of red teamers. Maybe they have a very big blue team, but like, there's the way it's levied, it's very interesting because they don't want to put a lot of money into the security program. Again, going back,
doesn't it? Yeah.
It all circles back. So, and it's like, well, you want us to be compliant. We've got to do this. We're ticking off boxes. We can't do this, can't do that, So I know that's very frustrating for the people that are actually like, Chris Roberts and Mike, the compliance issue, the tick boxing, like you said, like the tick marks, like it's just, you can't, I know that's a very frustrating, like, aspect.
Oh, I get it. Like it, and the moment it becomes a tick box exercise anyway, it's useless. What's the point?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're not going to follow, it's like ISO. We're pretty heavy in like ISO 27001, like auditing and getting people ready to be badged. But like if you go into a company and there's no buy-in, they don't want to use the policies, they don't want to create this ISMS and then actually use it to better their posture. What's the point? It becomes it's just a tick box exercise so they can get a government contract, or so they can look better in the eyes of their organization or their peers, and it's just like, nah, just don't worry about it. Like, if that's how you're going to use it, don't even bother.
Speaking on frameworks, so you said you deal a lot with ISO. Do you are you familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, or like, is there? I mean,
yeah,
stuff like going, as far as frameworks. I mean, do you have any, insight on that? Like, what you're seeing as far as trends in the UK, and because of ransomware, is it, anything on? Like...
We tend to try and map certain elements in from a SIEM source solution element. So that we can kind of see a multi-stage attack, with the different kind of adjuncts with the MITRE ATT&CK frameworks. We recently got into the, have you seen the Defend framework as well?
Yep.
Yeah, that looks wicked, to be fair. So it's really nice that they're kind of putting those together. In terms of what we tend to see, it's kind of like what's flavor of the week sometimes.
Right.
Like sometimes you see a lot of it, like with the H4unt3d exchange stuff. Going back to March now, oh my god, it's like Armageddon for us when that kicked off, because the amount of clients who were getting popped, and we were having to create detection rules, and it was always the same kind of DLR injection, like just constant go again and again, and that was that particular moment. But sometimes you see 9 times out of 10 you see that kind of PS exec usage, just ripping through the network, or use of remote tools, or like we said about the VPN kind of compromised credentials. Those are what I tend to see more than anything else. But I say that now, probably a month later, there'll be something new, weird and wonderful, that's kind of how it goes. But we do try and map to that as much as possible when we come to, like, I think it's very easy for an MSSP to kind of fall into the rhythm of create a few detection rules, pick up on some stuff, throw loads of alerts at the customer because, oh, look how much value you see, look how much we're doing for it. I hate that mentality. It disgusts me from an MSSP point of view. Like, we should be acting as that buffer to send you high confidence, verified alerts, to your IT team so you can act on them. Or, if we've got that response element, we'll act upon your behalf and then turn it into an after action report, But when it comes to look at investigating those TTPs, for example, and what we can do there. I see so many people who are just lackadaisical about it. Like, that you need to say it's a game for us, like we have to be at the forefront as much as possible. So when the new variants come out, and I can see that Gabriel's put like a pretty cool Twitter link that I'm going to follow in a bit as well. But like common CVEs for ransomware and what are they leveraging at the moment? It's always going to change. But if we can at least stay ahead of the curve and map this to the attack matrix in terms of what we're seeing, great.
Find that pattern, start to see those things. That's what interests me the most now. Like, I really think because of my accounting background, I really like seeing patterns of things, right? So and that's how you can almost, it's almost to me like a signature, right? Like, that's why you write signatures, on like threat research, right? Because it is, you see a certain pattern through, and it's repetitive. You're like, oh, that's XYZ, and it's, we need to do that. We, like you said, to stay ahead of those things. So
definitely. I think it is definitely, and like, I think there is like obviously that's a lot of what Blue Team do, in that having that analytical mind where they can go, okay, well, I'm going to follow these events. There's no single event to an attack, like you don't just look at one thing and go, oh yeah, I understand that. You establish the root cause, you go through kind of surrounding events, and you kind of make up this, you map this story in your mind, and then you know what's going on. And that's where the experience comes in, like we talk about. Just to pivot a little bit, we talk about training for these new juniors and stuff like that. Like, okay, we can get them into certifications or accreditations, and that's okay. But that real world experience, gaining that knowledge and that kind of connect the dots analytical mind, that's probably why it's so hard for people to get into our industry. Because that's, if you're going into the Blue Team, for me, that's pivotal, and to identify that in people. Some people are very good at assessing potential candidates for that sort of mindset, and we talked about that ambition and drive as well, and some people aren't, and if they aren't, and you fill your team with people who may not be right for that role or be able to handle that that level of pressure and work, you're going to run into abuse. You know,
I mean, how do you see for your specific company, how is the hiring trends with that? Like, I mean, are you seeing a lot of, people with degrees that don't have the knowledge, or are you seeing a lot of certifications come in? I mean, what are you seeing as the trend in the UK?
We tend to see, or myself, speaking from personal experience, I see people who have either just finished college or finished uni and they want to get into the industry. But for me, like I said, with my degree, great as a foundation, actually coming into it, like I had a really steep learning curve, and looking back now, I would have loved to have done like a sandwich year or an apprenticeship or something that gave me hands-on experience, which I think is just absolutely vital. So for me, and that's why I ended up, you talk about Mike, like mentoring. We've recently got into that, and I started mentoring with my old university, and we've started in trying to field people in and saying, like, because they came to us and say, oh, how do I get a job in cybersecurity? And it's like such a broad question. It's like, that's fair enough, but you got to sell yourself on your CV. Like, you can't just say, oh, I like computers and I've got a degree. Like, you get 90 applications in a day. You need something better. You need to be like, I'm a member of these communities. Like, I listen to these podcasts. Cheeky little plug there for you, but just saying. But like, I follow the InfoSec news. I'm members of like local groups. There's so many local groups knocking about now. Like, right. I'm sure there's a few even in Worcester where I'm based. It's the way it goes. Or I've taken part in these CTFs. I've taken part in these classrooms. Try Hack Me, Udemy. There's Immersive Labs is a really good one. And it's just knowing that people have gone that extra mile. And if they've gone that extra mile, chances are they're going to go that extra mile in the job as well. But it's difficult.
I think we've talked about this in the past, but talking more like about the apprenticeships. I know in several, like here in the United States, like high school, a lot of kids had a work program, so they could work, do the core classes, and then they could leave and then go basically do, hands-on apprenticeship. But it was for mechanics or very, more industrial type, stuff. And we were talking about it, like that really needs to happen in this industry, right? Because kids are, on, phones as babies, right? The digital natives, like they're, born with a computer in their hand. So the amount of stuff that they're going to be able to do in the future is going to be way more. However, that being said, like security is its own animal. And again, going back to teaching, the moral ethics of like, why, hey, yeah, just because you have a nuclear bomb doesn't mean you get to drop it anytime you want, right? Like you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing, for what purpose. You can't use it for X, Y, or Z, because I think we're leaving out those ethics when,
ethics is a huge part of it. We did a company the company I was with before was CyberGuard. We did we were partnered with the NCSC to bring in a new generation of, like teenagers anywhere from 14 to 18. So sixth form, which is kind of an alternative to college in the UK. And we brought them in classrooms, like 25, 30 people. And we'd show them how to scan for Wi-Fi, then how to just sit there and capture keys to then crack those codes and then get into that Wi-Fi and then jam that Wi-Fi or using open source tools. And you can see where this is going. So we taught them all this wonderful stuff.
Where's the ethical part?
Yeah, and then we were like, okay, we seriously need to really plug the ethic. Very early on, obviously, when we did a few pilot ones, we were like, the kids or teenagers, they're going absolutely crazy for this stuff, and that's great, and we're seeing a lot of ambition. But how far is it going to be until one of these people does this for real and gets in serious trouble? Right. So then we added another component, another element in terms of the ethics. And we actually, a good mate of mine, Cam, he, when he was 14, he ended up DDoSing SeaWorld for like 1.4 million, and it cost them like a hefty amount. I'll give you his number, to be fair. You can give me a shout just if you need anything sorted. No, I'm only joking. But he was very close. Like he was very close to getting extradited to the US at one point. But he learned his lesson. He did it as a laugh and all the usual stuff, and he saw it as a game. So we started getting Cam in to talk to the classes to say, this may be fun, but look at all of this stuff I went through. Look at, and it's not just like obviously the jail element. He didn't go to jail. He ended up managing to avoid that. And then the NCA ended up getting him into an apprenticeship, which was great, and then his life kicked off into the InfoSec, which is what we should be doing, But we got him in to talk about that, to talk about how much of a stress it was on his family, to talk about all of that sort, and that kind of sombered him down a little bit to say, this stuff is really cool, but please, it is illegal if you do it outside this room, pretty much is what we were saying,
Yeah, and actually that's exactly what Mike speaks on. That's exactly why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, he talks about, all of the things he did. Yeah, like there's some cool stories in there, and it's, like, hey, that's cool. But hey, by the way, you don't remember all the years I was on the run. I couldn't go home to my family. Yeah. I had no way to do X, Y, and Z. And that's why, he gets paid to talk, and he's mentoring at the Met, yeah.
And that's what we need, and that's, if people 100%. Don't rise up, like, to getting people like Mike in, getting people like Cam in, and
they need a real life example.
Yep. Yeah, real life examples. And for us as me as a head of, me as a leader, the boards, all of that sort of stuff, wising up that we need to get serious about this as well. And we need to engage with these people and give them opportunities. We're just making a rod for our own back, because they'll end up smashing one of my clients in a couple of years if we don't steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another topic I wanted to cover is obviously mental health, and you did mention that anyway. So I think the question for you, Sean, is how do you deal with the burnouts, long hours, and general mental health? And obviously,
heavy drinking. No, I'm joking. Don't take that as gospel.
and then obviously not just you, but what do you implement in your company for your staff?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a huge one for me. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for addressing mental health in our industry because, well, my wife's doing a PhD in behavioural psychology. It's clinical. She's going to kill me if she sees this, and I've got it wrong. But she obviously talks about it a lot, and I kind of bat ideas off her because of, like I was talking about, the stress, the burnout, the imposter syndrome, just the general toll it takes on all of us, And I'm not saying we've got like the worst job in the world, but it's certainly high stress, So for us, it's all about, it's something as simple as having one-to-ones, like once a month with our people, and saying, is everything okay? Not one-to-ones like, oh, is your performance on par? One-to-ones in, is your work-life balance okay? Is everything okay at home? Do you need a hand with anything? Are you finding the job okay? Are you under stress? Do you need a bit of time off? And if we need to plug that hole so you can go take a week or two and chill out, we'll do it. I'd much prefer you to be happy, healthy, and ultimately selfishly, because those happy, healthy people and this culture that we inspire ultimately benefits the business, because they work harder, they work happier. It's good stuff. They're more willing to go the extra mile because they know they're cared for. And that's a huge thing for us. A big thing for me is culture. Like, we need to inspire a culture where we empower these people to, if they've got to go and pick the kids up because the babysitter's let them down or something, yeah, don't worry about it, just go. Like, don't worry about booking a half-day holiday or that sort of rubbish. I know I'm going to get it back 10 times over if you I know I'm looking after you. If they want to work from home, let them work from home. What's all this office mentality rubbish? Like, I like being in the office every so often. Like, I like the hybrid element. I like seeing people. I like having a chat. I like the collaborative stuff. But, like, if these people are happier working from home and they can do their job just as well, and I've got metrics, I've got sprint planning, I've got all that sort of stuff to show me that they are doing that, what's the point, But it's so important. And if people are all, and the biggest thing that I will say about this is, again, it's down to myself, the leaders, the managers, the board to a certain level to kind of do it from the top down. And it's not all about take. We can't, as managers and leaders, just take from our employees and then not give anything back, because not only will they just leave and go somewhere else for more money or a better culture, but it's going to have a serious detrimental effect on them. And we need to really address that.
No, absolutely. So on October 31st is the 1 year anniversary of the Haunted Hacker podcast that Mike started with his roommate. And I'm working on the 1 year anniversary edition of the magazine. We haven't had the magazine that long, but it's for the podcast. And I actually have a separate mental health-ish section for it. So because it's very important that people know that they can talk about it. I also think it's very important for people that have had bad experiences of companies that have, let's say, they say one thing, but haven't done it, they're not saying something and doing another thing. They
don't go through with it. Yeah, it's all lip service, isn't it?
Lip service. That was what I was looking for. And so I mean, I think it's absolutely great that if they feel comfortable and can talk to you, because otherwise they're just going to go, yeah, I'm fine, and they're going to go find another job or something worse,
or even worse, like they have an episode, and the biggest thing for us, and we say about the one-to-ones and stuff, we have that open door policy. I talk to my staff too much, to be honest, probably. Like, I'm always ringing them, and I ring them on the weekend, and we'll have a laugh, and we'll just say, is everything all right? And you need to be that person. And if you're not that person for the teams that you look after, if you don't care about those people, don't be in a management position, because you are responsible for those people. And if you take the adage of, well, they're here to work, it's work, blah, 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 just don't bother talking to me. Like, it's one of them, because it's so important. It really can't be understated. Mindfulness is a great one. If you were talking about options on what people should do, I found mindfulness very effective, like even just when you're lying in bed thinking about that particular log, or you're thinking about that issue that's happened, especially this week, it's been an utter nightmare, but like just having a bit of chill time, just focusing yourself, it's good stuff.
I'm getting better at it. I've the planning, like using a planner. I mean, digital calendars are great, but when you write something down and physically look at it after, and I still have it in my, in my digital calendar as well, but something about doing that and putting like, I'm going to go meditate, or I'm going to do this. So I'm getting better at that. I'm not perfect yet. But it's, it's a work in progress, but that you're right. The mindfulness, the meditation, just taking a moment to stop and think about anything but what you're doing, because that burnout is so real. And, it goes back to passion, you'll burn out way quicker if you don't have a passion.
But even that won't get you 100%, will it? What I mean? Like even I've been close to it a couple of times in my career, and you think, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to get over it? And it is that, right, I need to take a bit of time for myself. I need to do some mindfulness. I need to focus on something. I need to go take the dog for a walk, like I need to just do something to disengage from what I'm in at the moment. And then hopefully I can move forward, and if we as leaders need to spot that, to see if someone, and you can tell if someone's off. If you care about your people and you engage with them, when, so-and-so's a bit quiet, like they're a bit shorter, because obviously an element of burnout is you just become a lot snippier for smaller things, which again, I've been guilty of myself, so, and it's just recognizing the signs and acting upon them, I think is the biggest one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your, forthrightness and how you're handling it. So anybody that wants to work for you sounds like they would be lucky. So we'll make sure, like, if you're hiring, let me know. I always try to help share and comment everywhere for people to get hired and stuff. But that's awesome. And I think, Alex, do you have anything else?
No, I think we can open the floor to the questions if anybody's got questions. While they're typing, I think, Sean, if you have any questions to us in general about haunted hackers, us particularly, some people here who are attending, just ask us now, and then we can discuss that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've recently, obviously, I met Alex. I met you, was it last week now?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, isn't it? And we started engaging about this, and I thought it's a really good thing. And watching the Chris Roberts one and a couple of others, it seems like I just like talking to people who get the industry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like talking to people who, not the salesman stuff, not that rubbish, like just talking about issues and all the rest of it. And I think that you guys are really kind of grabbing onto that, which is really great. I think there's a lot we can,
Actually, I do have a question for you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So how was it being at a conference for the first time since like the whole lockdown?
It was crazy. It was really good. But at the same time, I think office work has softened me immeasurably. I was there for 2 days. And like within 4 hours, my feet were hurting, my back was hurting. I was like, I am not. And obviously, like I said, I used to run a coffee shop. So like I used to be like 10 hours on my feet, 12 hours on my feet, no problem. It's probably completely fueled by caffeine at that point. But like it was great. But like I said, like it was great to just get out there and just talk to people about, what have you seen in the industry at the minute? How are we dealing with it? What problems are we coming across? What's always so infuriating that we just have to kind of deal with, and all that sort of stuff. The talk is really cool. Full disclosure on the talk as well. Our group technical director, Paul Colwell, who I've worked closely with since I've been at CyberGuard, who's great. Again, adopts that mentality of looking after your staff, the mental health element, which is really cool. He was supposed to give the talk, and he got really ill, and he's just coming out of it now. Nothing crazy serious, but he couldn't do the talk, basically. Found out at like 4 p.m. the day before. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I said in passing, I went, because it was either cancel it, and then as a passing remark, I said, oh, I'll do it, don't worry about it. And then Paul was like, oh, that's amazing, mate, cheers, I owe you one. Here's the slide deck. No notes on the slides whatsoever, because he's a proper wing it kind of guy, you know what I mean? So I was like, brilliant. Okay, so I was up till about midnight writing notes, rehearsing in my kitchen to the dog. She found it really engaging, so it was fine. And then obviously we went
so is she a SOC analyst now?
The dog.
Oh, CK analyst? A SOC
analyst? Yeah, I put her on.
Sorry, bad joke.
A little pause. But she's too young now. It's only 2. But yeah, so and it went really. Well, I think it went really well.
I had weird feeling in terms of like there's a lot of presenters or whatever you call them, whoever has the stand.
Yeah.
A lot of people turn up in like full suits and everything, There was only a few people who kind of came up like dressed casually, casually, and it's quite weird feeling to see everybody like so professionally dressed up and everything. And in my head I was like, come on guys, I was like, if you're especially in cybersecurity, I can't imagine any ransom groups and anyone wearing suit and being all professional. I was like, that's not how the reality looks like. I was like, we're not lawyers or anything. So I was like,
it's really interesting that as well, because we see people like since obviously COVID and everyone's moved to this decentralized model, and I think we've had this like social revolution of people realizing they can work from home and they can reclaim some of their life there, which is awesome, and that whole dress down, everyone's just fucking, you go down to London now, we started doing some work in London and nobody's wearing a suit. Everyone's just chilling in chinos and a t-shirt, and it's just normal. And then I went down in a full suit and was like, I am completely out of whack here. Like, this is not so I think people should move towards that. Just wear what you want, as long as it's not crazy, just wear, custom tracksuits, nice. And everyone has a different one for the team. That'd be really cool. But it's just, everyone should be more relaxed, but you still see organizations that are like, no, even for internal meetings, you've got to be like full suit, tie, suit jacket. And it's like, come on, man. Like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I literally went to Black Hat and DEF CON this year, and I wore dresses every single day. And I just was like, I have been in pajamas for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
I never leave my house. I just sit here and like in pajamas. So I was like, I'm trying to like pretend I'm like normal now. So and I walked into like the carjacking like village, and I'm like, and I'm in a dress, and everybody's like, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, just because I'm in a dress, don't underrate me. Like,
yeah. I'll rock a dress at the next conference, and then I'll see if anyone says anything. But yeah, no, I think it's great. You know? Like,
so we had a question from Richard, just so we're not forgetting.
Yeah.
So he asked about for the topic of ransomware. He asked how effective is follow the money in regards to cryptocurrency investigations.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I mean, we haven't. I mean, touch wood, we haven't actually had a company who have paid a ransom since I've been there. So like we don't really go to that point. But in terms of just that general element, I suppose it's dependent on what they use as a currency as well, because we see a lot. It's not Bitcoin anymore. It's of all sorts of different cryptocurrencies. I think Monero was one that we saw not too long ago. And I think it's because obviously the kind of tracking Bitcoin wallets and all the rest of it has become so popular. It's kind of like, well, you could get it in Bitcoin, but what's, you know, when you go down that money laundering element of like, obviously you're moving it around and then it goes to an exchange and all the rest of it, like, and you have to follow the money. How far does it go? And also, like, is that a viable form of attribution when we look at where that money is ultimately coming out from, or is that just another layer to it? You know, it's certainly an interesting one, because I'm always curious about how they realistically think they're going to get that out, and how they do that from an exchange point of view and ultimately get something out of it. But like, you looked at the dark side one, where they copped a bit too much heat for the Colonial Pipeline one. And I bet you that was a bloody VPN as well. But like, and they went dark, and they stole like all of that. They stole basically the wallet, didn't they? And left their affiliates in the dark. Which again is another reason why you can't trust cyber criminals. But it's certainly an interesting topic in terms of how effective do you want to use it. You know, also an interesting point for that. I think I was talking to Alex about it the other day. You know, like, everyone was like, yeah, dark side are gone now. They're completely kaput. We'll never see them again. And then like 2 months later, Black Matter are up.
Renamed.
It's like, oh, they look really similar in terms of TTPs. And it's like, they look really similar in terms of code. And it's like, is this just the same company with a new name? Or, you know, same gang. So yeah. It makes me laugh, that stuff.
But awesome. Yeah. Well, look, Sean, thank you very much for joining us today. If there's going to be any more questions, obviously I'll just shoot it over to you. Obviously there might be some questions in a Discord group. I'll send you the link as well to the Discord group. You can join. There's a lot of people in there. Yeah. And then obviously we'll talk about how we'll bring Kaspersky and the rest of the people, and your friend, the one that hacked into. We'll get them on the podcast as well. Look, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. And then we'll see you next week in a new podcast.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, guys. It's been great.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.